What's happening, beautiful people? This your boy Nico, and I'm back with another recipe. Today we're going to get into some pork chops, but we're not going to cook it just any old way. I'm going to introduce y'all to one of my favorite pieces of kitchen equipment, y'all. It's the Sous Vide machine. Matter of fact, hold on. The Sous Vide machine, right? So I first got introduced to Sous Vide when I was working at a fine dining restaurant here in St. Louis. They had a really nice size machine that allowed you to cook bigger quantities of meats or whatever, really. But this right here is a smaller version for the home cook. This is a Nova, they have different brands out there. Jewel is another good one. But this guy right here, this is my guy. Basically, it's the process of cooking something in a water bath, but keeping it at just a precise temperature, really. So we would set this in a water bath. Let me show you one second. Alright, so this is my container. You can use something like this or a pot, and you would basically fill this up with water. Put your immersion circulator in there. It comes with a clamp, so you can just attach it. And then basically what it does is it holds the water at a certain temperature, and it doesn't allow it to go beyond that, which cooks meats or whatever you want, really, vegetables, at the perfect temperature. Say, for instance, I want to get that perfect medium rare, so I'll set this to whatever the temperature needs to be, and then I can just let it go for an hour, 2 hours, and come back, and it'll still never go above that line. Really amazing tool. This one right here was probably only $100, so perfect for the home chef. Yeah, it's gonna be fun, y'all. Stay tuned. Alright, before we get started, you want to go ahead and prep the sous vide machine. So you want to get your container or your pot and fill it up with water. Make sure you leave a couple inches from the top so you don't overflow it. You want to set your temperature to 60 degrees Celsius and let your water come up to temp. While we're waiting on the water, we're going to go ahead and season our pork chop. Since we're dealing with a nice thick cut of meat, we're going to make sure we season this pretty heavily. So we're going to hit it with some kosher salt and some coarse black pepper, and make sure we get it all around it. Once we got our meat seasoned, we're going to transfer it to a bag. Now for this, you can either use a Ziploc bag. I highly recommend getting vacuum sealed bags. We're going to add our garlic in there and some fresh thyme. And while we're adding our ingredients to the bag, you want to make sure you keep the opening as clean as possible. So I always fold it over about an inch or two. It just helps keep the opening free from, any oils or anything that'll prevent it from sealing. Now, I didn't talk about this, but one of the key steps of sous vide is removing as much of the air as possible from the bag. So I'm using a vacuum sealed bag where the machine actually sucks out all the air. But you can do this with a Ziploc bag as well. It's just, a little harder. Removing the air from the bag will help our pork chop come in contact with the water and will help with a more consistent cooking process. Once our water is up to temp and our bag is completely sealed, go ahead and submerge it into the water and set your timer for 2 hours. Okay, and while we got our pork chop cooking, we're going to slice up half of a red onion. transfer them to a bowl. We're gonna hit them a little bit of pepper, salt, and then brown sugar, and then we're gonna give them a nice toss. After that, we're gonna transfer them to a small pot with a pat of butter, and we're gonna just cook these guys on super low until we have a really nice caramelized pan of onions. After 2 hours has passed, we want to open our bag and remove our pork chop. We're going to transfer it to a paper towel to get it as dry as possible, because next we're going to sear it, and it is hard to get a sear on anything wet. As I'm patting it dry, I'm also going to remove my herbs, and since I didn't have whole garlic, I have to brush off as much of the minced garlic as possible. Garlic can burn fairly easily in this browning process, so just want to scrape off what I can and make sure I get this as dry as possible. I get a pan hot on the stove with a little bit of grapeseed oil, something with a high smoke point. And I'm going to add my pork chop. Now the pork chop is already cooked all the way through at a medium, so we don't want to cook it for too long. So all we're trying to do is develop a nice crust on it, get a nice caramelization. So once we give it a flip, we're going to add some butter to the pan, and then we're just going to baste it with butter just to get that flavor going. A couple more minutes, and then we're done. Our pork chop should have a nice golden brown tan after we baste it with that butter. Should just have a nice little shine to it. You want to make sure you rest it for a couple minutes before we slice into it. I know it looks great, but fight the urge. After our pork chop is rested, we're going to go ahead and slice it up. You want to cut it in some nice thick slices. Don't want to go too thin. Thin slices tend to dry out quicker. Alright, to plate this dish, I'm going to add a little bit of apple butter to a plate. I'm going to add a couple slices of our pork chop, and I'm going to top it with some caramelized onions. Apples and pork go amazing together, so this dish should be fairly tasty. Hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. I cannot wait to dive in. Please Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.